Now that we've rendered out the interface for the iPhone, we're going to import that and put it on the actual phone animation. I've opened up the folder with the iPhone animations, and I'm going to hit Command I, go to File, Import, and I'm going to find that animation. And then I'm going to click on phone h.mp4. That's horizontal. If you were to double click on that and drag through, you'll see that the phone comes to rest horizontally. And that's what we want for this particular project. The other one is if in your own project you choose to have the app in a vertical format, depending on what the app might be, you're welcome to use that as well. I'm dragging it over the new composition icon. And now I'm going to drop out the green screen that's behind it. I'll go to Effect, Keying, Key Light 1.2, click on the eyedropper, click on the green background. Now we're going to have an alpha channel when this is done as well, but if you want to leave the black on for now, you're welcome to. The problem with this animation is now by the time it reaches the horizontal configuration in which we want to map on our movie, the animation is over. So we need to add more time to this composition. So I'm selecting the timeline and I'm going to go to Composition, Composition Settings, and I'm going to change the duration to 35 seconds. And now I'm going to go to the beginning of the timeline. Now that I've added more time to my timeline, there's two things I want to do. If I was to look at the final movie, we can see that the iPhone sails across the horizon statically towards us for a duration of 4 seconds before it starts to enter into the actual animation. And then once it reached the static horizontal position, it goes on for the duration of the movie. So we need to accomplish both those things. I'm going to put my playback head at 4 seconds. And I'm going to move the beginning of the iPhone animation to the 4-second duration. I can drag and snap with the Shift key, or I can hit the open bracket by itself and it places it there. So if we go back to the beginning, there was no content. And then once we pass the 10-second mark, there's no content. I'm going to right-click on the video clip in the timeline, and I'm going to choose Time, Enable Time Remapping. 2 keyframes appear in my timeline at either end of the clip. What that allows me to do is put my cursor over the very edge. I'll see a 2-headed arrow, and I'm going to click and drag the beginning of the clip all the way to the beginning of the timeline. Then I'll put my cursor over the end, and I'll drag it all the way to the end of my timeline. If I were to drag through or play through now, the animation remains static at the beginning, where it will sail over the planet, scale up, and then it will remain static horizontally for the duration of our movie. The next thing we need to do is now take our interface movie and put it on top of our iPhone. With the interface movie on screen, we have to line it up with the horizontal iPhone. I'm going to drop the transparency so I can see through it. Then I'm going to drag my playback head through until I see the iPhone horizontal. So it reaches horizontal position at 10 seconds. I'm going to put the beginning of that movie at 10 seconds. I'm selecting it in the timeline, I'll hit the open bracket, and now if I drag through, we don't see the interface until it goes horizontal. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to scale it down to fit onto the horizontal iPhone. I'll hit S on the keyboard and I'll start to drag manually to scale this to fit. Now don't worry about fitting it perfectly because we're going to layer mask this as well. I'm setting it for 68%. I'm going to zoom in on the screen, and with the clip selected of the interface, I'll hit G on the keyboard and I'll draw a mask around the perimeter. And I'll get my move tool and I'll fine tune that. If need be, I'll get my point conversion tool and work on the arcs. And I'm going to return my clip to 100% opacity. Now we had a 2-second lag at the beginning of the timeline for the interface movie, and that's to allow us to fade in from the iPad animation to the iPad interface we created. So I'll put the playback at the beginning of the iPhone X interface movie. I'll hit T for transparency, drop the first keyframe, make the opacity 0, move forward to 12 seconds, and then fade in the interface movie. So if I was to play that now, this is what would appear. Now this movie as well will terminate. So I'm going to stop it, select that clip, and just as I did with the animation, I'll right click, choose time, enable time remapping. And then I'll drag this to the end of the time sequence in this composition. So now we have a static frame that appears at the end of our movie. Now we're going to export the combination of the iPhone app screen art with the animated iPhone behind it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the default black background in my composition window. To do so, I'm going to go to where it says active camera. Directly to the left is a checkerboard toggle, and if I click on that, I will get the checkerboard pattern so that when I do export, I don't have a background. Next, I'm going to make sure my in and out point is set correctly. I'm going to put my playback head at the beginning, and I'll hit B on the keyboard to make sure it's flush against the beginning of my timeline. I've set my out point at 25 seconds, and I'm going to hit N on the keyboard at that point. Now I'm ready to go ahead and export this to composition render queue. Gone into render queue, composition head to render queue, and I'm going to click on the blue text next to output to. First, to direct it to a folder and to give it a name. Next, I'm going to click on the blue word lossless directly to the right of the output module. All I need to do is confirm that it's QuickTime, and then under video output where it says channels, I'm going to choose RGB alpha. I'm going to click on format options just to be sure the default animation is set still. It is. I'll hit OK. And I'm going to turn off the audio track just to minimize the size of the file a bit. I'll now click OK, and then I'll click on render.